Hello and welcome back to the Movie Memo Recaps. Today we are going to recap a 2021 movie titled One Shot starring Scott Adkins. Please be advised that there might be spoilers ahead. The film begins with an introduction to Lieutenant Jake Harris, who is now en route with his team for a covert assignment, and Zoe Anderson, a CIA analyst. Their target is a rendezvous spot to receive Amin Mansour, a terrorism suspect being imprisoned in a CIA Black Site Island prison. Tom Shields, the prison's second-in-command, greets Jake and his team upon their arrival. As they approach the warden's main office, they notice several inmates held in conspicuous cells. Tom brings Zoe and Jake to meet Jack York, the institution's intimidating warden. Before the encounter, Tom warns them about York's unpredictable character and inclination to be recalcitrant, particularly because he had not been warned of their impending visit. York appears perplexed by the CIA's sudden interest in Amin Mansour and their desire to relocate him to a jail in the United States. Zoe maintains silent about the details when York questions her because it is secret information. Despite this, Zoe assures York that the operation is legitimate by producing an official paper signed by the Minister of Defense that validates Amin Mansour's extraction and relocation. However, York continues to oppose the concept, citing the dangers of transferring a convicted terrorist to another prison. York intends to contact the minister directly to finalize the transfer, and he directs Tom to accompany Zoe and Jake to Amin Mansour. Amin, an inmate who has been subjected to unremitting suffering in recent months, has chosen silence. Zoe immediately orders the removal of Amin's shackles and begins questioning him. Amin defends himself, claiming to be a businessman and rejecting any participation with terrorism. When Amin learns of his planned relocation to the United States, he asserts his entitlement as a British citizen to legal representation. Zoe, on the other hand, denies his plea, claiming that the foreign minister has removed his British citizenship, depriving him of such rights. Following this, Jake expresses concern to Zoe about the possible physical and psychological consequences of her treatment of the prisoner, but his warning is ignored. Zoe is still determined to speed Amin Mansour's transfer. Jake, repeating York's earlier reservations, expressed doubts to Zoe and the CIA regarding Amin Mansour's rapid extraction and relocation. Nonetheless, Zoe defends the CIA's actions as a preventive measure against a repeat of the September 11th tragedy. Despite some of Jake's team members accusing Zoe of suppressing information, Jake stresses that their only responsibility is to protect Zoe's and the detainees' safety. Soon after, the car conveying the prisoner appeared. However, mayhem ensued when a person from the vehicle shot at a guard. The vehicle forced its way through the entryway, and a gang of armed men disguised within the truck launched a quick and indiscriminate attack on the guards. Firefights became unavoidable. Jake and his teammates had no choice but to aid the guards. Zoe proceeded to liberate Amin from his captivity and, with Jake and a few team members, prepared to board the helicopter. However, before arriving, a group of gunmen destroyed the chopper. The attackers effectively immobilized the guards, seizing control and forcing Jake and the others to find a safe hiding place. Later, Jake and his team led Zoe and Amin to the control room. Jake was able to neutralize numerous attackers during the procedure, one of whom was killed by a deadly shot. Tom attempted to contact for reinforcements, but the communication tower had been damaged by terrorists. The only available emergency phone was at York's office. While watching the CCTV feeds, it was clear that York was fighting to repel the armed invaders alone. Zoe identified one of the attackers as Hakim Sirif, a former mercenary who rose to lead a violent Syrian organization. Jake persuaded Zoe to expose the truth about Hakim and his associate's assassination attempt against Amin. Zoe ultimately disclosed that Amin backed ISIS and donated financially. The CIA discovered evidence of money laundering in Amin's firm, which was used to fund ISIS-led worldwide terrorist acts. Zoe attempted to persuade Jake that Amin was part of a broader ISIS plot to carry out a huge explosion in Washington, D.C. As a result, she insisted on swiftly extraditing Amin to the United States to prevent the bombing, assuming he was aware of its location. Amin immediately disputed Zoe's charges, claiming no knowledge of Hakim Sirif or his organization. Despite this, Jake decided to trust Zoe and developed a strategy to get Zoe and Amin out of the building. Tom, on the other hand, disagreed with Jake and questioned Zoe's allegations. Jake then equipped Amin with a bulletproof vest. At this time, Amin cautioned Jake, saying he would regret trusting Zoe's words over his own judgment. Meanwhile, along the corridor, two members of Jake's team fought off terrorists attempting to reach inside. Despite taking multiple shots, they were able to momentarily stave off opposing onslaught. Tom planned to hand over Amin to Hakim Sirif and his team, hoping to stop their onslaught. He refused to let his men suffer for the purpose of sheltering a condemned terrorist like Amin. However, Zoe interfered to protect him. This infuriated Tom, prompting him to urge Jake to eliminate Amin. When Jake refused to comply, Tom seized a weapon with the purpose to carry out the act himself. Amin, fearing for his safety, eventually disclosed that his 5-year-old son died in a U.S. military missile strike while attending a wedding ceremony. A week after the catastrophe, the leader of a radical group and his crew approached Amin, hoping to use his company for money laundering. Amin expresses guilt for supporting them, claiming that he was overtaken by grief over his son's death and driven by a desire for vengeance over the death of his only child. However, Amin adamantly denies any knowledge of the bombing plot stated by Zoe. Shortly after, they receive a video call from York, who notifies them that the emergency phone in his office is inoperable and that someone must move to the RA. The call is abruptly terminated as York faces an onslaught from the terrorists. Tom then briefs Jake on the RA's position, where Jake intends to personally modify the signal frequency, allowing them to seek military aid. Before leaving, Zoe explains to Jake her belief that Amin is dishonest, insisting that he must be aware of the bombing plan and its location. Jake then departs surreptitiously through a small window leading to a concealed passageway to evade the terrorists in the corridor. Outside, Jake seeks refuge after watching Hakim and his group shooting soldiers and other prisoners. Hakim then drags a woman, a jail administration officer, in front of him. He interrogates her regarding Amin Mansour's whereabouts, and she reveals that the CIA and Navy SEALs are planning to take him to Washington, D.C. They then murder the woman and orders his men to look for Amin. Jake immediately approaches the RA, eliminates numerous terrorists, and arrives at his target. However, Jake is unfamiliar with some of the electronics in the room, leaving him vulnerable and unaware that a terrorist has infiltrated and is prepared to assault him. Fortunately, York arrives just in time to eliminate the terrorist. York then attempts to call for assistance, while Jake rushes outdoors, diverting the terrorists' attention. Meanwhile, Hakim and his crew continue to seek for Amin Mansour in numerous areas, but have yet to find him. Hakim believes Amin is still in the control room, so he contacts one of his younger subordinates to offer words of encouragement and admiration. Hakim equips the young man with a bomb vest and instructs him to carry out a suicide bombing operation after invoking his commitment to offer his life for a good cause in exchange for a reward. Hakim's assignment left the young man visibly surprised and afraid. Nonetheless, his companions rallied around him, assuring him that the endeavor was respectable and would be duly rewarded. Hakim and his crew went with the young man to the control room, where they assumed Amin was hiding. They deployed smoke grenades to reduce visibility and distract the Navy SEAL unit. Concurrently, Jake and York returned to the control room via a concealed door, where York declared his desire to kill Amin, holding him accountable for the senseless loss of his soldiers. However, Zoe and Jake tried to talk him out of it. A ferocious shootout erupted, ending in the deaths of all Navy SEAL men. Jake and York rushed to interfere once they realized what was going on. Unfortunately, it was too late. The young man assigned for the suicide bombing pushed ahead and detonated himself right at the control room's entrance. Jake, York, and Amin all survived the blast. Zoe and Tom, on the other hand, were seriously injured and put unconscious. Despite Jake's instructions to stay put, Amin quickly fled the area. Jake immediately turned to examine Zoe's condition, finding her frail and helpless. She told Jake that Amin's wife was expecting a child. In her last moments, Zoe begged Jake to take Amin to Washington, D.C., to protect his pregnant wife. Zoe passed away as a result of her injuries after making her final wish. Jake sought cover when he noticed Hakim and his men approaching the room to investigate the scene. Hakim was visibly upset when he discovered Amin had successfully escaped. The young man had been sacrificed in order to eliminate Amin and prevent him from sharing information about the upcoming large-scale bombing. Tom, who had survived to this point, informed Hakim that Amin had revealed their entire plot. Hakim then killed Tom and ordered his troops to resume their search for Amin. Shortly after, Hakim received word that the U.S. military was deploying air support to their area to stop the assault and carry Amin Mansour to Washington, D.C. One of his crew members proposed stopping their hunt for Amin Mansour and hastening their departure. However, Hakim insisted that they would not withdraw until Amin Mansour was eliminated. Hakim and his gang were ignorant of Amin, who was hidden among the piles of prisoner bodies. Amin quickly changed his clothes, posing as one of Hakim's guys. His disguise was swiftly discovered, and Amin was promptly confined to a holding cell. Jake was in close proximity when Hakim's gang apprehended Amin. Jake successfully liberated Amin by attacking Hakim's guys who were guarding him in his cell. Jake then escorted Amin, who was prepared to face the terrorist attack despite the fact that he was fighting alone after losing his whole crew. However, Amin took advantage of the chance and fled, leaving Jake behind. Nonetheless, Jake remained steadfast and defeated the terrorists single-handedly. Simultaneously, Hakim and a few of his men found Amin and started fire. As Hakim prepared to assassinate Amin, Jake stepped in and launched a counterattack. Jake successfully overwhelmed Hakim's crew and faced battle against him. During the fight between Jake and Hakim, Amin, who had survived thanks to his bulletproof vest, safely fled the scene. Jake eventually defeated Hakim and chased Amin. Jake confronted Amin and tried to persuade him to listen to him. Jake revealed that Amin's wife is pregnant and suggested that she could be at the targeted attack site. As a result, Jake attempted to persuade Amin to reconsider his suicidal thoughts and join him on the trip to Washington, D.C. Shortly after, York, who had survived, emerged and threatened to kill Amin. Jake, on the other hand, acted quickly to incapacitate York and persuade him to spare Amin's life. After convincing York, Jake refocused on Amin, begging him to help prevent the attack in order to rescue his wife, unborn child, and countless others. Amin eventually succumbed and agreed to be flown to Washington, D.C., to expose the location of the bomb, just as U.S. Air Force helicopters arrived. The film concludes with York in reflective stillness as he watches Jake and Amin leave the island. Thanks for watching. If you are new, don't forget to subscribe for more of these recaps. Until next time, have a nice day.